Hi, in this video we're going to look at making a Reese patch in Serum and a Neuro Bassline. So let's have a listen to what I've made. Okay, cool. So let's have a listen to the Reese sound first and have a look at how it was made. So let's turn off the effects to start with. So there's just one oscillator in here and the filter's linked to a macro, so it's not actually doing anything. So most of the sound is just coming from the wavetable, which I believe was FM8. There's a small possibility it could have been the virus, but basically I had a Reese sound that I was happy with. I bounced it to audio. And then I had a look at the audio and was trying to work out how it changed over time and what made a Reese. And I came to the conclusion that it was this phase movement here. If you look how it moves back and forth when the wavetable position is modulated, that's what gives the Reese style sort of sound. Because yeah, without that movement, it doesn't really sound like anything. And then distortion, multiband compressor, and reverb. I really find the multiband compressor in here is really good for sort of blowing up sounds and making them sound bigger than they already are. And I've got some macros set up here for some different things. So there's a LFO here, which is like a sine wave, which is controlling the filter cutoff. And there's one for some frequency modulation, which is the sub oscillator. It's not being mixed into the signal, as you can see the levels all the way down, but it's frequency modulating the oscillator A, which just gives you more high end. And then there's a macro for the compressor and reverb. The other thing I've done on here as well is, so it rises over an octave over these 4 bars, and I've done that by drawing in a pitch bend here, and then at the bottom of Serum you can set the pitch bend wheel amount, and I've just set it all the way up to 12 semitones for an octave. It's all in all, it's really simple, but it worked out quite well. And then the bass patch without the drums. It's a little bit clicky at the moment, but we've bounced it down to audio and doing some fades, you could correct that. But let's have a look at how this was made as well. So these are both the same wavetable which I made on the virus. And let's start off by turning everything off and going through what everything's doing. So there is going to be a pitch bend on here somewhere, I assume. Yeah, there is LFO5. It's a very slight pitch bend here doing the master tuning just to give it some push off at the start of the notes. And then we've got this LFO here, which is doing most of the movement in the patch. And there is some frequency modulation from the sub as well here. Which again, it's not being mixed into the signal, it's just adds some more harmonics over a period of time. But this LFO pattern here is doing most of the work. And then with the second oscillator, it's got some unison detune, so it just thickens up the sound a bit. And then there's a bandpass filter, which is again being modulated by this, bandpass peak filter, which is being modulated by this LFO, and there's also an LFO controlling the frequency, which is the variation between band pass and peak. And then let's go through the effects. So there's the distortion, again, this same LFO modulating both the drive and the mix, and there's a filter here, a high pass prior to the distortion. Multi-band compression, which makes a huge deal of difference. And then there's this filter here which just adds some character to the sound. Really brings up the high end, and then there's a little bit of EQ, just boosting some of the lows and some of the very highs. So if we were to change this patch, just by changing the pattern of this main LFO here, you can completely create something new quite quickly. But any of these filters really work really well for Neuro, I find, just because of the fact that you can morph between two different filter types simultaneously, which not many synths unfortunately offer. Like I was to change that for a band pass notch instead. It's really easy to get really good results. And the compressor as well, without the compressor, it sounds really dull and lifeless without it. And that's just using quite a high ratio, 4:1, quite high threshold. I find you have to use quite a lot of gain usually to sort of compensate for the amount of gain reduction taking place. And I find keeping the attack quite fast works best as well for these kind of sounds. So yeah, that's how you can create some really cool patches really easily.